I've always been too Korean for white people and too white for Korean people. And I think a lot of people who are half mixes can identify with that statement a lot. I grew up in a predominantly white area in the US. And, I've been told throughout my whole life, through childhood, through adult life, that I'm white looking. And honestly, that's one of the most depressing things that someone can tell me. So, a little bit of background. My mother, my Oma, she was adopted from South Korea when she was just 2 years old. Now, the paperwork says she was from Seoul, her name, but a lot of that information we've come to find later in the future, it turns out probably a lot of it is a lie from the adoption agency. Anyways, she doesn't remember anything from that, right? Growing up, I was never taught to speak Korean. Obviously, being the US is English centric. So, yeah, I always just talked and lived and was raised in white culture. And I always had this underlying issue of being too Korean, really just Asian for white people. I noticed my friends were really loud. They always kind of treated me differently versus, their white friends. When it comes to physical attributes to all the way social issues, I definitely started to notice the older I started to get. So, that really caused me to have identity issues at an early age. And it just got worse and worse as I've gotten older. Now I'm close to 30 and I'm still dealing with identity issues. Um, I have less of a hard time with white people just because I'm so used to it, so accustomed to it over the years. But I have the biggest issue actually with Korean people. And Asian people in general are just going to tell me, yeah, you don't look Asian at all. There's nothing about you that looks Asian, which is simply not true. If we compare myself from my father to my mother, I definitely have a lot more of my mother's physical attributes in the mix, right? But because my eyes aren't, Asian looking, even though I have the Asian nose, I have the Asian mouth, everything else is just, well, you're not Korean looking. So it's very frustrating because I've felt very Korean my whole life. In fact, genetically, I'm predominantly Korean. My father was a European mix, and my mother, of course, is 100% Korean, as Korea is a very homogenous society. So this caused me immense identity issues and actually led up to uh, identity disorder that I have. So I'm still dealing with that today, and it only gets worse. When I meet people from Korea or just Korean Americans, even they're shocked that, oh, you aren't fluent in Korean. Why didn't your mother teach you? And it's like, okay, well, my mother can't help that. She was adopted. She doesn't remember anything, right? So how do you expect her to transfer Korean culture to me? And I think anyone that knows an adoptee can relate to that, right? Like, I think deep down she has felt her whole life that her own country, her own people have abandoned her. Her own family has abandoned her. So she really didn't express a lot of interest in Korean culture growing up. And so my sister and I really just took it upon ourselves to learn more about Korean culture as large. So yeah, it's been an immense challenge in my life because, like, for example, even at 30 years old, recently I was at my drawing class. I do life drawing, as you can see in the background, figure drawing. I was at my figure drawing class here in a state which is predominantly white. And of course, everyone in their class is predominantly white as well. And it was my birthday, and I showed up with some Korean rice cakes, okay, some tuk. And, it's the kind that has all the assortment of colors, very bright, very, even by the surface, I think it looks very tasty. So, anyways, I brought it to the class thinking people would enjoy it. I bought a bunch for my birthday. I wanted to share. And you should have seen the faces of these people when I went to offer them the rice cake. They were just like, "Oh," the face of disgust. And I told them, "Look, this is Korean rice cake. Do you want some?" Basically, and probably 90% of people said no. They looked at it in a disgusting manner. But the second I said, "Oh, it's like the equivalent of Japanese mochi," about a third of them actually, there was like a gleam in their eye. They got excited about that. And honestly, that really pissed me off because growing up, I've seen this obsession with Japanese culture amongst Americans. But anytime you mention Korean, until really recently with K-pop Demon Hunters, uh, even now, it was still with that. There's still a bit of dismissal there. I think maybe people associate Koreans with bad smelling food or something. I don't know. Um, so that was always been been a thing throughout my life. Maybe it's their exposure to animes, children. I don't know. Um, so that in itself is frustrating too. And going back to the Korean people, 100% of them aren't going to be able to tell I'm Korean at all. And when I tell them I am, they give me the ignorant statements. Uh, when they find out I'm not exactly fluent in Korean, they get judgmental. And they almost treat me worse than white people have grown up. And it's really depressing because, I've always felt a disconnect with them. Maybe that transferred from my Oma to me. And it just makes it worse. So it's just incredibly frustrating. It's like, do I have to be fluent in Korean to speak Korean? Do I have to look 100% Korean to be Korean? And the answer is no. But for the longest time, I've struggled with my identity. I had no identity. And I think a lot of uh, mixed people can relate to this, where you have no identity. So, over the last couple of years, I've really have had to work on accepting that I have no identity and that I just need to create my own. So, recently I've been trying to go to Korean church, trying to, immerse myself in the culture. And I am a Christian. Growing up, I went to American church, but going to Korean church, I felt better. I felt more comfortable there until I started to talk to the congregation, the members. One in particular that I was frequenting, they'd always be like, "What is this guy doing here?" Right? Uh, and I would try to tell a few of them, "Hey, I'm Korean," because some of them be like, What are you doing here? Like, what interested you in coming to Korean church in the first place?" And then, it's just like, well, look, I am Korean. So it's just unbelievable how frustrating that is. And, I'm not saying all Korean churches are like this. I've actually found one where there are other halfies there. For the first time in my life, I've had come across a place where there are people that look like me, talk like me, act like me for the first time in my life, in that many numbers in one place. It's rare that I meet a half Asian in general, but to be a half Korean is even more rare. It's more common to meet half Japanese, half Chinese, but half Korean is a very rare mix. It's very easy to find half Italian, half Mexican, whatever else, really. So finally, I found this place where other half Koreans are, and I finally feel like, you know what? I'm not alone. I do have an identity. Now, to go back to Korean culture, I'm not trying to diss Korean culture at all. I'm not trying to diss Koreans or Korea in general. In fact, I have an immense passion for Korean culture, obviously, being Korean. So, the last couple of years, I've actually gotten really into skincare. I for most of my adult life, I've ignored my skin completely. I did the classic male, just water to the face and call it good. It wasn't until my sister really put me on to skincare the last couple years, and my friend's son, he introduced me more into Korean skincare in particular. So, I've been really just enjoying that because I don't know. Some people will say Koreans are very vain, and there probably is some truth to that. But to me, it's more about self self love, right? I started with the basic, uh, you know, cleanser, toner, moisturizer, typical typical stuff. But then I did more of a deep dive, and now I turned into a whole hobby. Now I got like a whole collection. This is only just half of my collection. So yeah, that between Korean church and skincare, that has really gotten me more comfortable with Korean culture as a Korean American. So yeah, and I am starting to learn the language more on my own for the first time this past year. So between all that, I am finally feeling more of identity. And I don't have to be 100% Korean to feel that, right? So, I hope this message helps people that are other halfies. If you are half Korean, I'm sure this really resonates you deeply. Um, and as this journey goes on, I will actually be sharing more about skincare on this channel. But I want to get this out of the way and just tell you guys, look, this is my background, right? I'm not straight from Korea, obviously. I don't have the look. So yeah, I hope this helps everyone, and I will be posting more on this channel as time goes on. So I hope you guys. Oops, that's annoying. That really lost my train of thought. But anyways, I just wanted to come in here and share my identity issues. It has gotten better, thankfully. You know, I don't care what white people or Korean people think anymore. I'm only going to surround myself with people who accept me for who I am. I don't have to be white. I don't have to be Korean. I am just me. And there are people in this world I have found, thankfully, that accept that. So really, I only have room for that now and no one else. So thank you so much for hearing me out. And I have a lot of thoughts on these issues, not just skincare, but issues shared that maybe I can post more about. But as the channel name alludes to, I'm definitely going to be focusing on K beauty here. I used to think K beauty was just for Koreans, 100% Koreans, and really skincare in general. I thought it was just for women. I thought it was pretty feminine, actually. I'm a straight guy. I'm 100% straight. I love women so much. I'm like obsessed. So, I always thought it was feminine and gay, actually. But, the more I started to take care of myself, something like skincare, which we are in 100% control of, just like our physical bodies and fitness, I noticed the more effort I put into it, the more I was seen by women, actually. So it got me to the point where now women of all races, not just Korean, but white, see me as pretty, which, for the first time, I really have started to accept and embrace. I'm no longer afraid of it. And, genetically, I always had been big gifted. I really do hold the beauty standards that a lot of Koreans are trying to emulate now. So I think on some level, 100% Koreans might be a little bit jealous of me. I don't have to get double eyelid surgery, right? Um, stuff like that. I had the long eyelashes from my white grandma, etc. Red highlights from my dad being a redhead. The colored eyes. The list can go on. I don't have like blue eyes, but more hazel. But anyways, so the point is, the more I've been on this journey, the more I've realized, uh, I actually am pretty great by myself. I don't have to be white. I don't have to be Korean. Uh, I've heard some halfies say, "Oh, I'm 100% of each." But I don't even want to really say that either because I'm definitely not 100% of each. I'm just me, right? So hope this helps. And I'm excited to share with you guys more about skincare. As I was showing you, my collection is quite vast. I've tried a lot of different things through trial and error this past year, especially past 12 months. And, my goal for you guys is to have glass skin. You don't have to be Korean to have glass skin. Anyone can do this. It's achievable with anybody, and it will get results in life that are tangible. This will make you stand out more. So, yeah, guys, that's it for me. And I will see you in the next one. All right. Take care, everybody.